Hello and welcome to Global, and let's start with that breaking news from the United States, where it's been announced in the last hour that the country's travel ban is to be relaxed. From November, international travellers who are double vaccinated and test negative before their flight will be allowed to enter, which means that there will no longer be travel restrictions on the European Union, Britain and other nations. The travel ban has been in place since March 2020. So let's head straight to Washington and straight to our correspondent Gary O'Donoghue. And Gary, tell us more.
Well, obviously this has been timed to coincide with the meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, and the Biden administration having come under a lot of pressure, particularly at the G7 meeting earlier this year, to change its travel regulations from European partners, and the UK in particular has decided to do that. So, as you say, after 18 months, those from the Schengen countries in Europe, those are the countries without internal borders, plus the UK and Ireland, plus also China, India, Brazil, South Africa, they will be able to travel to the United States, providing they've had their 2 vaccinations and they take a test within 3 days of travel. Also, some new restrictions coming in on Americans who are planning to travel back to the US. They will, if they haven't had a vaccine, have to have a test within a day of travel, and again another test when they arrive. Also worth noting, for those vaccinated, non-Americans vaccinated coming into the US, they won't have to quarantine either.
Gary, I was just reading a piece from John Sopel, our colleague, who was saying when he was looking at this last Friday, nobody was expecting an announcement in Washington like this today. What has changed?
Well, do you know, I think there was a lot of expectation around the G7 meeting that something would change then, and they've been talking in this sort of joint committee for months now since then, and nothing really has emerged from it. So there's been no indication that this was about to change. There was a sense in which the Biden administration was concerned about the levels of vaccination here at home and wanted to get things going. I wonder, I mean, I'm thinking out loud here, but I wonder whether something has changed in terms of the damage to the Biden administration with certain, recent events. If you think about Afghanistan, you think about the business with the new alliance with Australia and the UK, whether they wanted to sort of reach out in some sense to show that they were back, that they were doing things that their allies wanted them to do. I mean, it may not be anything to do with that at all, but it is a sign perhaps of America reopening and reaching out across the Atlantic, particularly to Europe. And of course it will please a lot of people whose families have been separated for a long time across the Atlantic, and also businesses who have been frustrated in not being able to travel in the way they did before.
Yes, the British ambassador has just said that he welcomes this announcement. Great news for families and businesses both sides of the Atlantic. In terms of the practicalities, what is the estimation in terms of numbers? You were going through some of the countries, but what are the sort of numbers we're talking about here?
Well, off the top of my head, I mean, you think about the European Union, you're talking of north of 400 million people now are able to travel, most of whom weren't able to travel before. Obviously China is a huge number of people, the UK is 60 odd million, and Ireland of course. So these are large numbers. Also worth saying that there's been this asymmetry in the travel bans up until now, which has annoyed the Europeans and the British in particular, that Americans who were vaccinated were able to travel to the UK and Europe before now, and that wasn't reciprocated by the United States. So I think this, in a sense, will smooth over that particular wound. In terms of the other thing, more people in the UK and some parts of Europe, there are much higher rates of vaccination there than there are here so far. It's getting better here, but also I think a key factor here, Matthew, is that the dominant variant here in the US is the Delta variant. That's the main dominant variant in the UK, for example, and Western Europe. So in a sense, while there isn't another variant on the horizon, the risks are reasonably low if you're bringing in people already vaccinated of bringing in a new variant. If suddenly a new variant were to spring up in the UK or Western Europe, I think the administration might think again if they don't want to get that here.